My mother-in-law brought my husband's cheating ex to our wedding to teach me how to be a good wife. Now, her 30-year marriage has crumbled, and she's begging for my help to repair the damage. Hi there. A couple of days ago, I married the love of my life, Nick. Unfortunately, our special day wasn't without drama. My mother-in-law, Tina, decided to pull a shocking stunt that still has me reeling. She brought Nick's ex, Vicky, to our wedding. And not just as a guest, she introduced her as some kind of twisted role model for me. Now, things are falling apart for Tina, and she's been trying to guilt me into helping her rebuild her relationship with her husband and son. To be honest, I don't know if I should feel sorry for her or if I should just let her deal with the mess she created. For context, my husband Nick, 27M, and I, 27F, have been together for 3 years. Throughout this time, Tina has never hidden her dislike for me. Saying she didn't like me is an understatement, she downright hated me. From the moment we met, she treated me like an outsider, and no matter what I did, her opinion never improved. Tina's disdain stems from her belief that Nick belongs with his ex-girlfriend, Vicky, 27F, who, ironically, was unfaithful to him. Nick and Vicky had a long history together. They'd known each other since they were kids because their families were close friends. Growing up, they attended the same schools, started dating in high school, and stayed together until their freshman year of college. When college began, they decided to take a break because they didn't want to do long distance. Both agreed it was best to keep their options open. Despite the break, it was clear to everyone that they still planned to end up together eventually. I met Nick during college, and we quickly became friends. But that's all we were, just friends. Sure, I had feelings for him, but I never acted on them because I knew about Vicky. Even though they were on a break, I respected their relationship and didn't want to interfere. From what I know, Nick was equally respectful. He didn't pursue other girls during their break and remained loyal in his own way. To him, the break was simply a matter of logistics, not an indication that he wanted to move on from Vicky. After graduation, Nick and I stayed in touch as friends, but our lives took us in different directions. Nick reunited with Vicky, and I focused on my career. We rarely spoke during that time. About a year later, I bumped into Nick at a concert I attended with friends. It was a happy coincidence, but I noticed Vicky wasn't with him. Naturally, I asked about her, and that's when he dropped the bombshell. They had broken up just a week earlier. Nick explained that Vicky had been cheating on him with someone she met in college. Apparently, the affair started while she was out of state, and when she moved back, she continued seeing the guy behind Nick's back. She had intended to break up with Nick but kept delaying it, stringing him along while carrying on her secret relationship. Nick found out when he came across incriminating texts on her phone. They had a massive argument, and he moved out immediately. He was devastated. Their breakup wasn't just about ending a relationship, it also meant dealing with the fallout from both their families, who had been deeply invested in their union. Hearing all of this, I felt terrible for Nick. We had been close friends before, and I knew how much he cared for Vicky. Their breakup must have been crushing for him. That night at the concert, we ended up spending hours talking, catching up, and supporting each other. Over the following months, we reconnected and rekindled our friendship. Almost a year later, Nick asked me out on a date, and that's how our relationship started. At first, we were cautious, taking things slow. We both wanted to be sure this was the right step. Thankfully, our relationship blossomed, and 6 months in, Nick introduced me to his parents. While his father was warm and welcoming, Tina was cold and dismissive. Tina immediately made it clear that she didn't approve of me. In her eyes, Vicky was the perfect match for Nick, and no one could convince her otherwise. What baffled me was that Tina knew Nick and Vicky had been broken up for nearly a year before Nick and I started dating. Yet, she somehow blamed me for their split. The truth was, Tina didn't know about Vicky's cheating. Nick had kept it a secret to protect Vicky from the inevitable drama it would cause. Their families were close, and a revelation like that could have created a rift. However, even without knowing the full story, Tina's animosity toward me seemed over the top. Over the years, Nick did his best to defend me and stand up to his mother, but Tina remained unrelenting. Eventually, we accepted that she wasn't going to change. I started keeping my distance from her, and Nick supported my decision. When Nick and I got engaged 8 months ago, Tina sulked about it non-stop. But nothing could have prepared me for what she did at our wedding. During the reception, Tina approached us with a smug expression and announced she had a special surprise. Moments later, she walked in holding Vicky's hand. The room fell silent. Vicky hadn't been invited, and her sudden appearance shocked everyone. Tina loudly declared that she had brought Vicky to teach me how to be a good wife. Her voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, and I felt my stomach drop. Nick, however, didn't hesitate. He immediately confronted his mother, shouting that if her idea of an ideal wife was someone who lies and cheats, then Vicky fit the bill perfectly. His words left Tina speechless. She had no idea about Vicky's infidelity, and the revelation stunned her. Without missing a beat, Nick grabbed Tina by the arm and escorted her out of the venue. Vicky, too, left quietly, avoiding further humiliation. When Nick returned, he and his father apologized to our guests for the disruption. Thankfully, everyone was understanding, and we managed to move past the incident. The rest of the evening went smoothly, and we treated Tina's outburst as nothing more than a minor hiccup on an otherwise perfect day. Later, when I tried discussing the incident with Nick, he firmly said there was nothing more to talk about. He had made up his mind, Tina was no longer part of his life. After years of tolerating her disrespect, this was the final straw. We had planned to speak with his father the following day and let him know that we would be drastically reducing our visits from then on. This was a necessary step now that we were planning to cut Tina out of our lives. It would make seeing him more challenging, but it was a decision we had to make for our own peace of mind. However, the next morning, when we called him to let him know about our decision, he surprised us by saying we didn't have to worry. He assured us that we were welcome to visit him whenever we liked. He then explained that he had made the decision to ask Tina to leave the house. He admitted that he knew, deep down, that the reason we hadn't cut Tina out earlier was because they still lived together, and it would have been awkward for us to make that choice while they were under the same roof. But after what she had done at our wedding, he couldn't tolerate it any longer. He told us that it was time to stand up for himself, for his son, and for me as his daughter-in-law. He had made the decision to ask his wife to vacate the house. We were absolutely shocked. After more than 3 decades of marriage, he was now taking this bold step. He explained that, despite his deep love for Tina, he couldn't continue to ignore her behavior. At some point, he had to prioritize what was right over what was comfortable, and that included not turning a blind eye to the way she had treated us. He made it clear that he wasn't going to divorce her, but they would be living apart for the time being. His decision was contingent on Tina offering a genuine apology to all of us before anything could even start to be repaired. We were relieved and thankful that he had made this decision. It was something we had never expected, but it made things feel a little better, at least for the time being. For those 2 days, things were relatively calm. But on the 3rd day, after our wedding, Tina found a way to reach out to me. Since I had blocked her number, she had to use a burner phone to contact me. She texted me, apologizing for everything that had happened so far, claiming that she had misunderstood the entire situation. She expressed that now that the truth about Vicky had come to light, she saw things in a completely different light and realized how wrong she had been. Tina said that all she needed was one more chance from everyone, and to make that possible, she needed me to forgive her and help convince everyone to do the same. I couldn't understand why she expected me to help her. At first, I simply blocked the new number she contacted me from and ignored the message. But after a while, it seemed like she was enlisting her friends to text me on her behalf. They all kept telling me that because of the fiasco at our wedding, not only was my husband refusing to speak to her, but even her own husband had kicked her out of the house. She seemed to believe that she couldn't just walk away from a 30-year marriage like that, and she pleaded for my help to fix everything. She kept telling me that she was genuinely sorry for everything, but it wasn't like she could undo her actions. She was counting on me to be the bigger person and forgive her. Tina also said that she had explained everything to Vicky, and that after Vicky returned from college, she had noticed that things had felt off between her and Nick. However, she assumed that it was Nick's fault and not hers. Whenever Nick would return home for the holidays during college, he would talk a lot about me, his friend, and Tina had assumed that I was the reason he and Vicky had broken up. At the time, she had no idea that Vicky had been cheating on him, and she had convinced herself that I was the one who had come between them. Of course, Tina was wrong about this, as I had only been friends with her son. But in her mind, she had built up this narrative where I was the one who had ruined Nick and Vicky's relationship, which caused her to hate me. She admitted that the breakup had shocked both families, and their parents were so disappointed that they were no longer on good terms with each other. In her eyes, I was the reason the relationship ended, and this is why she had treated me so poorly. While I already knew most of this, hearing her acknowledge it made me even more upset. Even if I were to entertain the idea that I was somehow responsible for their breakup, it still didn't justify the way she treated me. Nick had been equally involved in the situation, but Tina chose to blame me instead of considering his role in everything. It seemed that she needed an excuse to harbor resentment against me. I couldn't help but feel that she had created this whole scenario in her head and was refusing to accept reality. I've been ignoring her for the past few days now, and I've spoken to Nick about it. He told me that I could do whatever I felt was right, and that I shouldn't feel any pressure to make things right for Tina. She had created this mess herself, and it was up to her to fix it. He said that she had ruined every relationship she had been a part of, and that it wasn't my responsibility to try and make things better. He thought it was completely ridiculous that she would expect me to help her after everything she had done. I agreed with Nick, and that was how I felt about the situation. But when I spoke to my parents about it 2 days ago, they didn't entirely agree with Nick's view. They were visibly uncomfortable, and I asked them to be honest with me. They explained that they didn't think it was entirely Tina's fault. They believed that she was simply acting out of her emotions because she didn't know the full truth. Naturally, I was upset, but they urged me to look at things from her perspective. They made it clear that they weren't excusing her behavior, but Tina was from a different generation, and she had dealt with things in her own way. They explained that, in her mind, I was the reason Nick and Vicky's relationship had ended. And not only that, but she also felt that I had ruined a lifelong friendship between their families. They acknowledged that Tina had reacted poorly, especially at the wedding, but they also reminded me that she didn't know the full truth about Vicky's cheating. They told me that I didn't have to forgive Tina if I didn't want to, nor did I have to follow her requests, but they simply wanted me to consider her side of things. This conversation with my parents left me feeling conflicted. I had already known the details of their argument, but hearing it again made me more confused. I can understand why Tina might have believed that I was responsible for Nick and Vicky's breakup, given how things seemed from her perspective. But, at the same time, the truth was that I was never to blame, and I shouldn't have been treated so poorly. In the end, I still feel like Tina should have treated me with respect from the very beginning. Now, I'm stuck in two minds about what to do next, and I don't know what the best course of action is. My biggest dilemma is whether I should be the one to take the first step toward reconciling, or if I should stand my ground and leave it all to her to figure out. She should have been told about Vicky's infidelity from the very start, don't you think? I believe that would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. So, does that mean my husband and I are at fault for not telling his mother that his past relationship ended because his ex had cheated on him? To clarify, I really have no idea why Vicky showed up. I don't understand what she was expecting. If she truly thought she could get away with her actions, she was clearly mistaken. And yes, up until now, she knew that we had kept her secret about cheating on Nick. I knew the truth, but I didn't say anything to my in-laws because I knew it wasn't what Nick wanted. I didn't want to betray his trust, even though, deep down, I knew it might have made things easier for me. Vicky was literally indebted to us, yet she decided to try and screw us over. I spoke with Nick about the situation, and he told me that this was completely unexpected. He was just as blindsided as I was because since we've been together, he's had no contact with Vicky. She's been blocked from all of his social media, and Nick suspects she just showed up to stir drama. There was no other reason behind it. He's aware she harbors hatred for him because, even though he kept her secret about the cheating from his parents, he didn't do the same for his friends. Their large group of friends from high school pretty much sided with Nick when they found out about the cheating, which led to the breakdown of the relationship. Instead of taking responsibility for her actions, Vicky blamed him and tried to smear his name wherever she could. Nick's pretty certain that she never liked him after the breakup, but this time, it's going too far. We don't know if her parents have discovered the real reason for the breakup yet, even though Nick made it clear at the wedding that she had cheated on him. Her parents weren't invited to the wedding because after the breakup, both families were shocked, and they kind of drifted apart. Naturally, they weren't included, but mutual family friends were there, so they might have shared the news. But honestly, that's not our concern, it's for Vicky to deal with. She probably thought that because her parents weren't invited, she could get away with it. But I really hope they find out the truth, and even though it's been years, I hope she faces some consequences. Update 1, thanks for your comments. I spoke with Nick about my feelings, and despite his advice against it, I couldn't shake the guilt. I thought the best way to handle it was to talk to him, as I always do when I have something on my mind. I told him I really believed that things might have been different if we had been upfront with his mother from the start and told her exactly why Nick and Vicky broke up, because she had cheated on him. Maybe, if she had known from the beginning, her reaction would have been different. I even showed him the messages Vicky had sent me, which I had been hesitant to share earlier because I didn't want to cause more drama when I knew Nick was already hurting from cutting Tina out of his life. But we discussed everything, and he acknowledged that my feelings were valid, and my guilt was understandable. However, he still didn't believe we owed Vicky anything, not even the truth. He said it should have been enough for her when he told her their relationship was over. What happened after that wasn't her concern, and it was her issue that she couldn't move on. Nick also mentioned that, even if the breakup wasn't due to cheating, it still wouldn't have been her business. Vicky had no right to treat me the way she did or publicly try to humiliate me. There was no excuse for her behavior, she was trying to manipulate me. He also respected the fact that my parents had tried to get me to see things from her perspective, but ultimately, I didn't need to live by their standards, and I agreed with him. Speaking with Nick brought me a lot of clarity, and I no longer feel confused about this situation. Update 2, Hi. A couple of days ago, I spoke with my husband about my feelings. After discussing everything, I decided to block all the numbers my mother-in-law had been trying to contact me from. I also decided that if she tries to contact me again, I'll continue blocking her and ignoring her completely. I also made up my mind to talk to my parents about everything because they had tried to get me to see things from Tina's perspective, and I really respect them, which is why I wanted to be upfront with them about my feelings. I hadn't been in touch with them regularly in the past few days because I'd been thinking about how to handle this situation with Tina, and I knew they'd bring it up. I was avoiding them a bit, but today, after some small talk, they asked me what I was going to do about the situation with Tina. I told them I wasn't going to do anything. I didn't owe her anything, she had ruined her relationships herself, and I wasn't responsible for fixing things. Besides, she had always treated me disrespectfully, so I wasn't going to be her doormat. I told my parents that I respected their attempts to get me to understand Tina's side, but honestly, I didn't feel any empathy for her. I decided to stay away from her and the situation. If my husband and his father wanted to work things out with her, they could do it on their own. I wasn't going to push them in any direction for Tina's sake. Thankfully, they were respectful of my decision, and we ended the conversation on good terms. We've always had a very open and healthy relationship, so it wasn't hard to explain my stance. They understood my point of view, and we left it at that. Unlike some people who commented, my parents weren't trying to force me to apologize just to keep the peace. Now, I can finally go on my honeymoon in a couple of days without any of this weighing on me. Update 3, hello again. It's been 5 weeks since my last update, and a couple of days ago, I returned from my honeymoon. While we were away, my husband and I made it clear to everyone that we didn't want to be involved in any drama. We didn't mention any names, but it was obvious we were referring to Tina or even worse, Vicky. The message was mainly directed at my parents and my father-in-law, as they were the ones most likely to be contacted by them. Thankfully, my parents and father-in-law made sure the rest of the family understood and followed suit, and I'm really grateful for that. While we were gone, Tina stirred up a lot of trouble. She realized I had stopped responding to her, and since she had no other way to contact her son or husband, she began showing up at my parents' house. When they refused to entertain her, she visited everyone else in the family, telling them I was the reason her son and husband weren't speaking to her anymore. She tried to convince them to help her by reaching out to us, hoping they'd pressure us into talking to her so she could speak to Nick. Thankfully, no one in the family fell for it, and they all reported her actions to my father-in-law. He became even more upset and told us that he'd spoken to a lawyer and was filing for divorce because he was done with Tina for good. A few days later, when we returned, he told us the news. Tina wasn't happy about it, but she continued to take out her anger on me. She and Vicky have been sending messages and emails to everyone, claiming that the reason Nick broke up with her was because he had been emotionally involved with me. They've accused us of fabricating the cheating story to make Nick look like a saint and turn everyone against them. I don't even know what they're trying to accomplish at this point. It's clear they're just grasping at straws. Vicky wants to be accepted back into her family after they cut her off when they found out about her cheating, and Tina is going through something similar, hoping for her son and husband to accept her again. But, given their behavior, I don't see that happening. Honestly, I don't care about any of that anymore. Nick and I are happy, and I'm glad I didn't try to fix things for Tina. I'm pretty sure it would have backfired. Whatever happens, Nick and I are good, and I'm confident that after the divorce, my father-in-law will be better off too,